Hey, welcome to Music for Wednesday, April 22nd. We are going to continue our journey through the instruments of the orchestra and the brass section. Yesterday, we talked about the trumpets and the French horn and the trombone. And today, we are going to continue with two more of the low instruments. So that means that they use the bass clef. So let's get started. First up is, oh, wait, before we do that, I need to remind you of the resources that you need. Again, it's going to start with the first page looking like this. You don't need Tuesdays. So any links that you need will be on Wednesday. So after you watch this, if you want to keep watching the rest of the videos of the instruments, here they are under Wednesday. So now let's get started. The first one we are going to do today is the baritone. It is a low-pitched brass instrument, again, in the bass clef. It typically has 3 valves and has 9 feet of tubing. It's also similar to an instrument called the euphonium, but it's a little bit smaller. Now, what I usually tell people is the baritone and the euphonium, the only difference is how they're spelled, because most people can't tell a difference between the two of them. Euphoniums have a higher likelihood, meaning it has a better chance of having 4 valves than baritones do. But again, most people can't tell the difference. In fact, I can't even hardly tell a difference other than euphoniums usually have 4 valves and baritones have 3. The baritone is used in concert bands, brass bands, and marching bands. Although most people in a marching band would not use the kind of baritone that looks like this. They usually use one that kind of looks more like a really big trumpet because of how much easier it is to march with one that looks like a trumpet that you hold out in front of you, as opposed to trying to hold on to one that looks like a little tuba. But that's just a personal preference. So let's listen to the baritone. Let me get that just a second. Here we go with the baritone and what it sounds like. Again, this has an orchestra or a band accompaniment, so you're going to see a lot of people playing. Now she's standing up with it. It's usually what you do when you play a solo with an orchestra or a band accompaniment. This right here on the stand next to her is a mute. And you see the trumpets right here, they have the mute in their bell. She'll put that in the bell later to make it sound a lot quieter, and it changes the tone just a Okay, that baritone actually happens to have 4 valves if you are counting. Doesn't matter, it just makes them easier for some of the notes to come out and for some of the fingerings that she doesn't have to use some weird ones. That's all the 4th valve really does. So continuing on to what I call the big daddy of the brass family, and you'll see why in just a second, is the tuba. It's the largest and the lowest of the brass instruments. The first tuba was invented in 1838 and was called a bass tuba. Makes sense because it's in the bass and it's a tuba. It had 5 valves. I'm not sure how they could do that, but that's what they did. Today's tubas usually have 3 to 6 valves. Tubas are used in orchestra, concert band, and brass band. A tuba used in marching band wraps around the player's body and is called a sousaphone. And it's called a sousaphone because the person who invented its last name was Sousa, so he named it after himself. You get to do that when you make up an instrument. So let's listen to a tuba. See how big that mouthpiece is? The bigger the mouthpiece, the bigger the instrument. Just like the bigger the instrument, the lower it is. Now this has an orchestra playing again, and that's okay. You get to hear the string introduction and hear some woodwinds too. See, there's the tuba player right there. See how big that is? Look at the size of those valves compared to her fingers. See how big they are? It's a pretty big instrument. But remember, big and low doesn't really mean loud. She's playing it pretty quiet. All right, that's pretty much the whole part of that song. So you don't have to go back and listen to that one unless you want to hear it again. We have one more thing to talk about today, and that is what's called a brass quintet. And a quintet is when you have 5 people playing together. And so a brass quintet is 2 trumpets, a horn or a French horn, a trombone, and a tuba play together. Sometimes they substitute other instruments like a baritone for the trombone or a bass trombone for a tuba. And a bass trombone is exactly what it is. It's a trombone that plays lower than a regular trombone. Brass quintets first appeared in the 1940s. This quintet that we have, I'm so sorry, the quintet called the Canadian Brass has made a brass quintet very popular. The Canadian Brass is a really famous brass group that has many albums out, and we are going to watch a video of them play a very fun song called Flight of the Bumblebee. And it is supposed to sound like a bumblebee flying around. Let's see if they do it, making it sound like that. Now, if you look, the second trumpet player has a smaller trumpet than the first one. That's called a piccolo trumpet, and it's a piccolo because piccolo means little. And so it's just a little trumpet, just like the piccolo as a flute, which we'll talk about later, is a small flute. And you might also be wondering, now, why does this tuba have a black part and a brass part? Some people like to have their bell made out of a different material than others. And it's just a preference, and that's what he wanted. Okay, we're going to listen to just a little bit more. I'm going to stop it here though, because I want you guys to go and finish listening to the rest of that and any of the other ones that you want to listen to from today, or you can go back and listen to ones from yesterday. And we got one more day of the brass. And so I will say goodbye for now, and I will talk to you later. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.